CrossFit fam, welcome back to the channel. If you made it this far, I want to congratulate you because you've gone through all the boring process. So in the past videos we talked about finding your average weight, which is going to be used to find out your calculations and to kind of see where you're at. We talked about finding your maintenance calories, which is your starting point to where you're going to basically start for your diet plan that you're going to make for yourself. Now, one of the big things we're going to be talking about now are our macronutrients. So how much proteins, carbohydrates, and fats that we're going to eat a day. So why are we going to eat fats and proteins and carbs? Well, the big reason why we should have protein is to help build our muscles. First, let's talk about our protein intake. How much do we need every single day to maintain muscle, build muscle, or just live in general? So the RDI, which is basically the nutrition government, recommends that we should be eating at least 0.8 grams of per body weight in grams. Does that make sense? No. Okay. Let's break it down. So yeah, the recommended daily allowance. So it's just our recommended intake of protein is 0.8 grams per body pound, and that is basically used to maintain or build muscle, and that's the bare minimum. So let's put an example because that number seems kind of weird. So for a person who's 160 pounds, they're going to be eating about at least 128 grams of protein, the minimum. And that's just to replenish your muscles, to restore your energy for the following day. Now, this is a little bit weird because the RDI, or the recommended daily intake, they recommend us to have 0.8 grams for the average human being. That's not taking into account whether you're male or female, or it's taking into account whether you're an athlete, or just a regular person. So I've looked at different studies where we looked at the International Sports Science Association, and they've actually came up with a different theory or a different explanation or whatever. And they said that you should be eating about 2 to 3 grams per kilogram in weight. So for a 160 pound person, that's 73 kilograms in body weight. You're going to be multiplying that times 2, which is the minimum of what they're asking for. And then you're also going to be multiplying 73 kilograms times 3, which is their maximum number. And the range basically is that for a 160 pound person, you should be eating between 146 grams to 219 grams of protein. First of all, the RDA or RDI recommends us to have, or recommends a 160 pound person to have 128 grams a day of protein. 128. Now, the ISSA recommends a range from 146 to 219 grams of protein. So looking at these numbers, you can see that it's way out of the charts. So let's break something down. Looking at some other research I've had, and I'll put down the references on the details right there at the bottom. There's a whole variety of different sources and different intakes that they recommend us to have. So what I would recommend for you is to have at least 1 gram per body pound. So if you weigh 160 grams, 60 pounds times 1, you should eat about 160 grams of protein. Now, why is that? Well, we have a whole range. If we follow the range from what the ISSA recommends, 160 grams is somewhere in the ballpark. And from experience with my coaching, and experience with my bodybuilding, and experience that I've seen with other athletes, I've always seen the marker of being at least 1 gram of, you should have at least 1 gram per body pound. So in other words, basically you're eating the same amount of protein as you weigh, in order to build muscle. So the RDA recommends us to have this minimum to restore muscle, but the ISSA recommends us to have this range to build and maintain muscle. So in other words, you can experiment with yourself, which is probably the best thing to do. But if you want to do, or at least follow what a guideline wants to have you do, I would just recommend eating 1 gram per body pound. So if you're a female that weighs, let's say 20 pounds, you would eat about 120 grams of protein. That's simple. The one thing to keep in mind is that the 160 grams of protein that you're going to be eating, so the 1 gram per pound that you're going to be eating, is basically going to help you whether you're cutting, whether you're bulking, whether you're trying to maintain weight. Another thing is, because we're all individual human beings and we all have different genetics, different metabolism intakes, some people that weigh 160 pounds, that intake might not work for them. That's why there's this range. So in other words, experiment with yourself, have at least 160 grams of protein, or at least one, if you're 160 pounds, or 1 gram per pound of protein, and really experiment with yourself. If you're cutting and you want to eat a little bit more protein, so you want to go to, let's say, 190, so which would be like maybe 1.2 grams per body pound, then go for it. If you're bulking and you want to have maybe 1.5 grams per body pound, then go for it. But that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, is that everyone is different. Some people having that maximum grams of protein is perfect for them, but some people having the minimum grams of protein is good for them. So, in other words, take into account, if you want to have at least a number or an average, just do the 1 gram per body pound. Next thing, let's talk about our dosage. How much protein you should be eating per meal. So, looking at bro science, we've always heard that you should be eating about 6 to 8 meals every single day so you can maximize your protein synthesis. Protein synthesis, for those who don't know, is a process in which your cells build proteins to help restore muscles. Yeah. Anyway, now I want to talk about that idea in general. Looking at several different studies, looking at several different studies, I found that there's this one article from Phillips and the rest of his buddies, her buddies, I'm not sure, just know their last name is Phillips, and they said that you should be eating about 0.4 grams per kilogram in body weight for 4 to 5 meals. That's that study. There's another recent study, so that's about, an example, it would be about 4 meals times 73 kilograms would be about 29.2 grams, or rounded off, 30 grams of protein per meal. So for a 160 pound person, 30 grams of protein, do the math, 160 divided by 3, that would be whatever the number is, but yeah. Look at another research study by Egan and colleagues. They said that you should be eating about 0.25 to 0.4 grams per kilogram in body weight, which is essentially eating about 18 grams to 64 grams of protein. Now, looking at a more recent study by Cohenfeld, I really don't know how to pronounce that, but anyway, by this person who's a researcher, they suggested that you should be eating about 0.4 to 0.55 grams per kilogram in body weight. So that's about 29.2 to 39.6 grams per meal. Now let's talk about these studies. So each study is slightly different. Usually they're all slightly leaning towards the 0.4 grams per kilogram. So eating about, for a person who's 160 pounds, All of these three would agree or slightly agree that it's okay to eat about 40 grams if you weigh 160 pounds, 40 grams of protein per meal times 4 to 5 meals, whatever it is that equals to your 160 grams of protein. Now, one of the things I want to mention is this science is really new. The whole nutrition science in general, it's so new that these researchers, they're still making studies, they're still doing research as to how much protein you should eat. Looking at some research we found online, there's some people that argue saying that like if you wanted to, you can eat about all your protein intake with one meal. And keeping that in mind, if you weigh 160 grams, or if you weigh 160 pounds, and you eat 160 grams divided by like 4 to 5 meals, you're eating like a low number, 20 to 40 grams of protein. If you weigh 250 pounds or 350 pounds and you're eating the same amount of protein in your body weight within 4 to 5 meals, that's a slightly different number. So one thing to keep in mind is different metabolisms, different body pound weight, different intakes in protein, and also is the dosage. So basically, there's really no strong evidence that says you need to eat this much. So if you want to eat 6 meals a day, that's up to you in order to meet your protein intake. If you want to eat 2 to 3 meals a day, that's up to you. It really is going to be more on the preference side. Just because the science isn't that strong enough at this point right now, that there's not enough science to basically back up saying that like you should be eating this much, this much, this much, or this many meals. So let's take that into account. When going through your whole process, whether you're bulking, cutting, or maintaining, keep this in mind. Preference. Are you a person that likes to snack throughout the day? If so, then it should probably be okay to eat more meals throughout the day because you're a snacker. Or are you a person that has a strong metabolism like myself? I can eat about 3 to 4 meals a day, and that I can eat about 3 to 4 meals a day, and my protein intake would be different. So some days I'll eat 4 meals and I'll have about 40 grams of protein per meal. Some days I'll have 3 meals and I'll have about 53 grams of protein per meal. It really is more individualistic, and it's up to you. Are you a person with a faster metabolism that can handle more, or a person that's a snacker that can eat less? So take home the message is an amount of dosage. It doesn't really matter how much protein you eat within your meals. So one meal you want to eat 30 grams of protein, the next meal you want to eat 50, the next meal you want to eat 60. It's really up to you. It's mostly a preference. The take-home message of this whole thing is that as long as you're meeting your macro goal, for a 160-pound person, there are 160 grams of protein, or if you weigh 120 pounds, your goal would be 120 grams of protein, or whatever you would like. As long as you're meeting that goal by the end of the day, then you should be fine. So whether you're cutting, maintaining, or bulking, as long as you're meeting that goal, don't worry about eating 7 to 10 meals or 1 to 2 meals. It's really a preference and it's up to you.